welcome back to another episode of CBR Saga. My name is Darren Wartz. I'll be your host yet again, and joined by my two favorite gentlemen once again, Curtis Nash and Josh Gruber. How's it going, boys?
Great.
Fantastic.
Sure sounds like it. We are here to just go down a rabbit hole of rampant speculation about where we think this MCU and this movie universe that they've crafted over the last 10 years, 11 years now, is going to be headed, because we had our big bad, who was Thanos, teased through multiple movies. He came into the fold, then he died, and so did a bunch of other key players from the Avengers, and kind of leaves us with a where do we go next kind of question. And we're kind of getting some of those answers, and I think we'll start with WandaVision, and that'll lead us into this kind of speculation that we're going to go down, because I think it all ties in, and we'll touch on more in a few seconds, of why we think Mr. Sinister from the X-Men could be the next big bad that they're going to be teasing towards. So WandaVision, also, by the way, there's gonna be so many spoilers in this podcast. Yeah, so if you haven't watched WandaVision, if you haven't watched a Marvel movie, you're probably gonna want to do that, because nothing is gonna make sense for the next 20 minutes.
Just pause this, catch up, come back.
Exactly, pop back in, and then you can speculate with us. So WandaVision is doing some stuff where I think by the end of this series, we're going to hear the word mutants uttered in some capacity, and I think that is going to open the door for X-Men, and along with X-Men, Mr. Sinister as kind of the main big bad that's going to kind of culminate in the X-Men, in the Avengers, and bring everything together for this phase 5, 6, or 7, or whenever we get this next huge team up, is going to be. So the reason that I think that we're getting mutants in WandaVision and All-Star, then we'll go to you guys and see what you think, but there was a portion in one of the more recent episodes of Monica Rambeau where they told her that if she goes back into the Hex, she's going to be in danger, because the 2 times she's gone in there already, her DNA has been rewritten on a cellular basis, which I'm pretty sure means that it is unlocking the mutant gene within her body in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And with the way the Hex expanded, I think other people that get trapped in there are going to have the same kind of issue happening. And is this going to spark out and create mutants within the world? And then I think that could bring in Mr. Sinister as well. So, Curtis, do you think that towards the end of this series of WandaVision, we're going to have a tease towards mutants so that Mr. Sinister can become being built up within the movies?
I believe so. I think they have to. It's kind of like the next big expansion of the MC universe is mutants, or somehow bringing mutants into the fold. That's why I think Mr. Sinister is such a good choice, because he's kind of he can be a behind the scenes guy. The one that's teased. He was already teased. Yeah, he was teased already in those awful X-Men movies. The Essex Corporation.
That was all Fox. Just to say, like, that was all Fox.
Exactly.
It wasn't Disney.
It wasn't, but it's a good character, because the history of this character is DNA manipulation of him trying to make mutants. Yeah. That's his whole thing. So who better to bring it into the MCU, I think.
To touch on what you said, Josh, where that was Fox, is they had it was in Deadpool, they had that Essex school, and that's where they were kind of torturing kids, which is what, Nathanial Essex loves to do. But now with WandaVision, the X-Men universe with Fox, and the MCU and the Disney universe, kind of the same. Now that we saw with the Quicksilver character coming over being from the Fox universe. So could that have been, Josh, them sliding open the door a little bit to make this a possibility?
Oh, here we go. Like, speculate. I feel that
that's why we're here, baby.
The Pietro that's there is not Quicksilver.
See, I feel that as well.
I think it's a different character in the MCU that's kind of poking and prodding at Wanda, Scarlet Witch. But yeah, like the end result being the same, where like this Hex is changing people. And I like that idea, because everybody knows, or everybody that's read House of M, she gets rid of mutants.
Right.
Now, that's a cool little twist to kind of be like, okay, it's based loosely off House of M, or maybe we'll see a House of M down the line. But to have Wanda make mutants, ooh, I like that.
I'd like to see like a spin on that, because there's her famous quote is just "no more mutants," and then it kind of blasts off from there. So if they could find a way, and Marvel loves to do this, is just kind of like take little garnishes from things in the comics and build their own universe. That would be a fun way to be like, instead of destroying them, she wound up creating them. Curtis, you had mentioned earlier when you were saying about the testing that was going on and the experiments that were happening. Do you think that maybe this could all go back to, which has been referenced a lot in WandaVision, Age of Ultron, the movie, when all the experiments that created the Maximoff twins was going on, that maybe Nathaniel Essex was involved in some way?
This was the branch off of my idea is,
all right, get sweaty.
I think it doesn't need to be the Essex from the X-Men universe. Nathaniel Essex is in the MC universe.
Right.
You know? It doesn't have to be that version of it. I was thinking on the lines even of Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Baron Zemo, who is going to be from Civil War.
Right.
You get to see him in his full garb. I think he's trying to find a way, you know, to get rid of the Avengers, all this kind of stuff. But what if he finds out, maybe even going into old Hydra bases, that he finds like Essex Corporation,
just old files,
materials there, and
experiments.
Yeah, exactly. And then he finds Nathaniel Essex and finds out he's been doing this research. Like maybe it was this, even like it was teased in WandaVision that she's, you know, recoding their DNA and stuff. But what if it was as simple as the snap?
Oh.
What if that snap and the power surge that was brought out took that 0.01% of people who had the X gene and just bam,
boom,
just like that. It brought it to the forefront a little bit more, and now Essex has secretly, he would say something cool like, Baron Zemo meets up, he's like, we don't need magic. He's like, we have science to make our own superhumans and stuff like that.
Okay.
Like, that's why I think he's such a good behind the scenes person. He can be pulling these strings everywhere.
They had that kind of throwaway in quotes line when they talked about him using the gauntlet to destroy the stones and the amount of cosmic radiation that is set off across the universe and all that stuff. So that's like one of those things where just like them recanonizing that little kid from Iron Man 2 being Spider-Man, if our Lord and Savior Kevin Feige wants, he could just dip in and be like, you know what? That could have been the thing. Have been the thing that kicked it off. Do you think that because his origins date back to the 1800s?
I was gonna say, like, there's multiple kind of characters. There's multiple Mr. Sinisters, like across the like the Marvel universe. We've seen so many different iterations, even like a lady Sinister,
Mrs. Sinister, yeah.
But that being said, like him being a mutant himself, like he basically can live forever. He has clones. He knows how to like just kind of change out of bodies. So that's why like he could be around since, you know, World War II, like Kurt said, like the Baron Zemos and all that stuff, that Red Skull. You know, he could have been around for quite a while working this stuff.
Well, and that'd be something I'd love to see. You go back to Red Skull, it could be like how in Endgame we got to revisit all our favorite Marvel movies, where you could have an 1800s period piece that maybe tied loosely into stuff that was happening. Then you could flash forward to where he was during when Captain America was being made, that maybe these mutants and this word we haven't heard in the MCU yet has been used throughout time, where they could just kind of retcon stuff by going back. And you could have him manipulating everything through the time. But the weird thing and the hardest thing I think to kind of bring into this, and we'll see if we can speculate in a way that we can kind of create this dream movie. Could you have Mr. Sinister come into the fold and be created without Apocalypse?
I think so. I think so.
Yeah.
What from the first three phases, we should get out of our heads that the MCU is like, oh, they're pulling from this comic. This is what this story is going to be about. They like you said, they do a little sprinkling of little tidbits from the comics that get you all excited, but they still created their own story. That's why I said mutants could be from the snap. It makes complete sense.
There's just enough canon that they pull out of like certain stories that make us nerds real sweaty while like making their stories their own, right? So, that's from there. We know that.
Because, that's how we like to hold ourselves above everybody else, to let them know that I was aware of this before you were.
That's right.
At least that's what you guys love telling me as much as humanly
Civil War was Civil War, but it wasn't the Civil War of the comics. Like, not even close to the Civil War in the comics. Everybody's like, oh, Spider-Man's going to reveal himself in the movies. I'm like, no, he didn't do anything like that. Just because that was a big moment in the comics. They have this habit of doing that. They can do whatever they want. That's why I think this is the coolest idea, to bring mutants into the fold.
So speaking of doing everything that they want and kind of picking from little places throughout comic history to bring into it, would you like to see, or would they keep in contact his involvement in the Weapon X program and bringing in Wolverine through Mr. Sinister, which is having mutants introduced in WandaVision, and you tie all this stuff together and have Mr. Sinister come in and maybe like be leading the Weapon X program and bringing in Wolverine to the fold? Because you can't have X-Men without Wolverine. And if you're going to be bringing in Mr. Sinister, you have to bring in X-Men because they're synonymous with one another. So what is a way, and put on your sweaty pants for this, what is a way that you think the MCU bringing in Mr. Sinister could introduce Wolverine into the fold?
I know. Here's a good idea.
Let's see. Okay, here we go.
Here's one, Kurt. Here's one for you, Kurt. I think if the MCU's bringing in X-Men, you bring in X-Men as like from a point of view where they're kind of bad. We don't know about mutants, and you do an Avengers versus X-Men.
Yes,
right off the bat.
That's what I want.
Right off the bat, you have Mr. Sinister like pulling the strings. Maybe like Wolverine is a little brainwashed. Maybe you have like a group of like young kids that don't really know because Sinister is actually evil, so they start off fighting against the Avengers, and by end of, say, movie, boom, you find out Sinister's bad. They're trying to maybe bring Wolverine over, something like that. But I do honestly think if you're bringing in X-Men, if you're bringing in mutants, it has to be against the Avengers.
Well, that would be a really cool thing to do, because you could put us in the place of the people in the movie universe where obviously we know the X-Men are good and we trust them, but X-Men and mutants are always kind of, it was the allegory for being homosexual back when those comics were being made. So they had got a lot of hate. A lot of people didn't like them and stuff like that. So you could kind of create it in that way where, as the moviegoers and we understand as the characters inside of the movie, don't trust them because, well, where have you been? You're coming out of nowhere. What's going on? Can we trust these new superpowered beings?
Here's what I want to see. I think you have to, just because Hugh Jackman doesn't want to be Wolverine anymore, you need a new Wolverine. Back. Like, it has to be done. But I want to see Zemo somehow involved with Mr. Sinister, and then make their own mutant team of like bad guys to fight, because Zemo can't do him by himself, to make his own team of bad guys, which could in turn become the Thunderbolts.
Which
is a whole nother can of worms. Yeah. But then they already have some X-Men. Like, what if this whole multiverse thing works out the way we think it might, when people are coming, maybe Pietro is Pietro from the X-Men universe, blah, blah, blah. And then what if they pull from, like, I think it was all new X-Men, when that original team comes back and be like, this is not how mutants act, like, we're the real.
It's supposed to be.
So you give another shot to, keep Jennifer Lawrence out of it. Because Mystique is not a good guy.
No.
But all those young guys that got a crack at 2 movies, they did a decent job. It was just a horrible story. They're not bad actors by any rights. Give them another shot. What if they just showed up at the end and be like, we're the real mutants?
I was going to ask you guys, like, how do you feel like bringing the people who were cast back in, like, from Fox? Because I feel like Fox, that's dumpster fire trash. Like, we don't want that stuff in the Disney world.
Fox did suck at X-Men movies.
But like Kurt said, like, do we give like these people another chance at, a young Cyclops, young Jean Grey? Because I really do like that idea, like in the comics where the original team comes back. So they're like, Jean Grey is back in the comics.
But the actual original team.
I mean, God, there's so much stuff, because like you have like Jean Grey travel through time and stuff with Mr. Sinister, and like back to the 1800s, where you could maybe bring that into a way that would be interesting. Honestly, though, I would like to see some recasting, but I'd like to keep it the same, just for like the Deadpool aspect of, there could be a scene happening and like Brick Tamlin from Anchorman, someone could look over at the recast Wolverine and be like, you're not Logan. Like, you know what I mean? Where you have people from other universes where it merges it together into, maybe you could have the multiverse at the end of Multiverse of Madness merged into one Earth at the end of it, and one universe where some characters from the original X-Men movies were merged into this universe, some from the new Marvel movies were merged into this universe, but everyone maybe remembers the universe that they came from.
Adding mutants into the mix is just pulling from a whole new genre of comics, X-Men is almost their own. They have just as many comics as like the whole Marvel, X-Men is like their own thing in Marvel, which I think they got to pull from some of it, like just a little tidbit. So I said, like, the all new X-Men is a good way to be like, have some of the original team that were, good actors in those movies to come over. Maybe not, as a big deal, but could you imagine that being a post credit when all of a sudden, Cyclops and Jean Grey show up?
A younger team shows up.
Yeah, and like I said,
it's like, this is wrong.
No, I want MCU. Yeah.
Mr. Sinister Fox.
They deserve it.
I love the hate for Fox is flying around right now.
But like I said, it's Mr. Sinister. It's such a small thing to have Mr. Sinister, but I think it opens the most doors. Like you meant, like opening the doors to Thunderbolts is insane, because then you get like, I want to see Norman Osborn, like a new Norman Osborn, take over Thunderbolts like he did, and I want to see like Green Goblin, not like Glider Green Goblin. I want to see Monster Green Goblin in the MCU. That's the MCU that I want to see.
From like Ultimate Spider-Man.
Oh yeah, man, like that's the Norman Osborn I want to see. Like, there's so many offshoots just to the possibility of having mutants in this universe. It's insane.
Okay, so we're pretty sure that I think we're all in agreement there that we're going to hear the word mutant uttered before we get through these Disney Plus shows, and that bringing mutants into the fold, Josh, I love the idea of Avengers versus X-Men. That is just such a great way to bring them in, and I think the catalyst to be like, whoa, these X people aren't to be trusted, is you give us the Rogue that I grew up loving from the animated shows, who gets all of her powers because she absorbs it all from Captain Marvel, who we now have in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Then you have Claire Danvers in a coma while she has her kind of playing through her head and things going on, and then the Avengers have to come in because one of their own was taken out by this overpowered mutant that they don't understand, and that's what brings them all to culminate and fight.
There you go. Hey, call Hollywood.
What if? Here's
another gentleman exclusive here on CBR Saga.
What if this Pietro is an actual Mystique?
Whoa.
Like an actual evil Mystique in the MCU.
Curtis.
And she's just looking like Pietro. Boom. Can we drop a mic anywhere?
Just be careful with it. They're expensive.
I wasn't thinking of like him being Pietro. I was actually thinking of him being like the devil, Mephisto.
It could be. That seems like a little bit too far-fetched for me.
No, I'd love to see that. I still think that Pietro is maybe Doctor Strange with an illusion cast on him, trying to break through and let her know, because we're going to see Doctor Strange in the show at some point, and I think she's going to be taken away by him to kick off the multiverse of madness. But what I'd like to know is, so we've built our movie on how we can bring Mr. Sinister in, and we're getting towards the end of this, so we're going to start wrapping it up. So we have him brought in, how we could kind of be manipulating things behind the scenes, how that could lead to Avengers versus X-Men, and it could blow up as him, the new big bad, pulling the strings behind everything we've seen the last few years. Casting. Who would you want to see cast as our new Marvel Cinematic Universe X-Men? Who would you like to see be Mr. Sinister, be Cyclops, be Jean Grey?
Ooh.
This is Kurt's forte. I'm horrible at casting.
Pedro Pascal.
Oh, just because he's everywhere?
No, I'm joking. He's in everything. Man, it's so hard. They've grabbed like so many good actors already because they've built their universe. Everybody trusts it. I want them to pick like give somebody a shot. You know, an actual shot at this that you've barely even heard of.
I'd like that for the X-Men, but you'd need a draw. Like, I'd like to see as a wink and a nod, if you were to cast Mr. Sinister, make that Hugh Jackman. Bring him in as Mr. Sinister, as the wink and the nod, but you have a new Wolverine.
Could you imagine? He would never go for that.
Why wouldn't he? Hugh Jackman is a treasure. That man loves the fact that we love him, and he would do it for dump trucks of money.
I feel that Sinister is kind of in the same boat as a Joker, in the sense that he has that maniacal grin.
Defoe.
You need to cast someone that has that smile and then that look, right? That would be like super scary in makeup. Can you imagine what he would look like? Man,
this is tough. This is like, you think of it, a good actor, and you're like, oh yeah, he's already played something in the MCU.
Yeah, that's true. Crap, he's already in the movie.
Yeah, he's already cast.
You know?
I think I can agree with that. I do what Star Wars did when they were rebooting things, where let's bring in some unknowns and let's launch some new careers. Because like you said, if you bring in a big name actor, like say bring in Brad Pitt, or you bring in a Dwayne Johnson. Those are always Brad Pitt and Dwayne Johnson. They're just in different scenarios. They don't really ever like become that character. So you're right. If you were to bring in a big name, you would kind of lose that when you're trying to establish these new characters. So unknowns, I think, would be the right way.
They don't need a draw anymore.
Yeah.
At this point.
Well, we obviously have our ideas on where we think these movies are going to go, and we have our dream casting, and we have our speculation that we like to throw out there. But at the end of the day, so do you. So let us know in the comments. Do you think Mr. Sinister is going to be the next baddie for the Marvel Cinematic Universe? Do you think it's going to be somebody else like Josh, those two names he threw out? Let us know in the comments, and always keep it locked on CBR Saga. Josh, Curtis, always a pleasure, and thanks for joining me, boys. I can't wait to do this some more with you guys in the future.
Thanks, buddy.
Yeah, anytime. Thanks, man.